Hi guys, and welcome back to another video. So today's video is going to be a little bit different. As you can see, I already have a sketch finished, which means that I'm not going to be really showing too much of the sketching process other than probably just a quick time lapse. But I ended up working on this piece while I was kind of like out and about today, waiting for my friends so that we could get our dresses altered and pick up some makeup. But this sketch was actually a redo because I initially had this one, but I was not liking how it was turning out because I did improper planning of my my initial base for this. I didn't really take in consideration some of the proportions, so when I was doing the actual sketching part, I didn't really like it. So probably while I'm doing a little bit of the rambling, I'll insert some clips of while I was out and about working on this particular sketch. So for today's video, I thought it'd be fun to take you through more like real-time-ish kind of step-by-step of how I do majority of my coloring. So we do have Hyacine from Honkai Star Rail. So I already blocked out this little guy's color just to get better placement because I didn't really plan too much of where I wanted him to be. Initially, I was going to have him behind her shoulder, but I kind of wanted her hair to be flowing in front, so I didn't really want to cover that as much anymore. But let's go through the steps. So typically, if we minus this little guy, you can see this is kind of like where my planning was. So we have through our steps here, we have our rough sketch of what I initially wanted things to be. Whatever the little guy's name is, I was gonna have him here. Then after that, I moved him up here. Then I didn't really like it because it kind of broke the movement. So I took him out as well and then placed him here. Cleaner sketch, I will lower the opacity and sketch over top. And we are left with this sketch. Then we can turn this one off. So to kind of like set up my layers, I will duplicate our sketch. And because I won't need these anymore, I'm gonna group them just to keep our layers nice and tidy. Then after that, we can set our sketch to multiply. I'm already gonna bump up the saturation, lighten my lines, and make my sketch a little bit on the warmer side. And then we can add in any of our background colors or anything like that, just because it will affect the rest of our colors for our figure, as well as setting our like color temperature or just like general lighting situations. So for this one, I think I want to keep it fairly simple and more on like pastel-ish side. A bright yellow, maybe a gradation of a little bit of blue. I might just like add clouds or something super simple. So I might go back in afterwards to add a little bit of our yellow to give it more of like an underlit cloud look. And I'm gonna keep everything kind of like on more of a curve. On like a complete tangent, I've been playing Fantasy Life, and oh boy, if I end up doing fan art of my little character, which I'll explain maybe in a future video if I ever do, some fan art of that, I think it'd be good to do some like really cute simplified like environmental studies or something. I feel like I had a phase where I knew how to draw clouds pretty well. Then I never drew clouds again, and now I actually don't remember how I usually paint them, man. Also on like an unrelated note, I am listening to 17's new album. I couldn't listen to it right away because I was traveling. There was like no good opportunity, and I didn't bring like proper earbuds or headphones to listen to stuff for my phone, just because I didn't bring like an adapter. And you know how like more recent phones are, they only have like the USB-C, and I only brought one that had like the normal headphone jack because I brought my Switch Lite and my iPad. I love Thunder so much. It's so catchy, and I've been seeing a lot of people say it's very second gen feeling, which I agree. Because I am a second gen, third gen kind of K-pop stan. And then the solo songs. I am more gravitating towards the ones that are more like ballady. And I think it's Jonghan's solo. It gives me whatever Mingyu's solo from like the very first time when all the members had solos for a concert. Because besides Woozy's What Kind of Future, luckily we get that one at least, bless. But I need Mingyu's. I think out of all the other solos, like other than Woozy's, Mingyu's was my favorite. Next thing will be blocking in her colors. So I will make a new layer that will be underneath my sketch. And because we have the set to multiply, colors underneath will kind of like change with my sketch. Hopefully you can kind of see that. It kind of changes rather than just being normally on top like this. So that's the advantage of using multiply. But let's redo this and kind of pick our skin tone base, and we can start to use our lasso tool with the color fill option selected, which is this one. So when we do end up connecting our selection, it will automatically fill everything, which I find very helpful because I used to fill everything like manually. Just gonna connect to our tail end here. You can see it automatically filled in. So there's a lot of gaps I need to kind of get rid of. So I'm going to turn my color fill off, and then we are going to use, so I think I have everything. And then we can use a giant eraser and get rid of. You can definitely fill in whatever color that you want to, but I find it easiest if I fill it in with our skin tone base. Then we can alpha lock it. And alpha locking it will allow me to basically color within our silhouette and not exit anywhere that doesn't have the color already placed. So now that I have like her skin tone base kind of filled out, we can also adjust our sketch color. So I kind of want it a little bit more orangey and a little warmer. Then we can actually start to fill in and start shading. So in terms of steps, I typically go skin, I'll do eyes, I'll do hair, and then I'll do clothing. Because I have like the skin tone already set, I can be as messy as I want, because as we work on eyes and hair and clothing, it will slowly cover up any of my messy shading that I'm doing for the skin, so I don't have to be too particular. So I don't know if I'll make her backlit for this one, even though I know the lighting's kind of more intense in the background. But after our first initial layer of shading, of like our peach, I'm going in with a little bit more of a pinker, darker tone and just kind of deepening some of our shadows. And then I'll switch to something much cooler, leaning towards purple or blue. For some of our shadows, I am going to lean into our purple kind of territory here. And I'm just like layering it very lightly, and then picking up the new color, which is kind of like in this area, so that we can kind of lightly layer it and transition it with our peach color. Then we can go in and add shadows. So I might go into more purple gray territory for the shadow of her sclera, which is like the white part of the eyes. Honestly, her color palette I love so much. Which is another reason like I wanted to draw her today. Other than that, it's like I mentioned in like previous videos that I wanted to play a little bit of kind of like catch up and refreshing a lot of my prints, because I'm going to be retiring a lot of my old either Star Rail, it's mostly Genshin ones I think I'm going to be retiring. I want to kind of refresh my selection, but I'll be definitely doing some like redraws in the future. So I'm adding a lighter color to the bottom of her eyes, and then we're gonna deepen the top of her eyes. So usually if I'm darkening something, I tend to make it a lot cooler as well. So in this case, I made it cooler as well as making it darker and a little bit more saturated. And I'm gonna fill in her lash lines because I'm taking advantage of the multiply layer, changing colors appropriately. So we're gonna layer up a few colors into her lash line. And this is something that's also very stylistic that I like doing, is adding a band of color near the top of the eyes. So in this case, I'm gonna add a little bit of pink because it's very prevalent in her color palette, and I think it looks nice with this kind of like teal color. Just to make it a little bit like shinier. So it's kind of like a preference that I like to do. I also do kind of like leave a gap up there when I'm doing traditional sketching as well. Just kind of adjust it. I think even more of a green sky would actually look really cute. And then we can go back, and next up would be hair. So she has kind of like a bubblegum pastel pink-ish color. So while I'm doing the hair, I try to keep in mind where I want to keep some lighter areas, either for dimension or light source, or when I'm doing the framing pieces of the hair towards their face, I will often bleed in a little bit more of that skin tone color to keep everything a little bit on the softer side. Sometimes I accidentally lean the pink a little bit too like magenta-ish when it should be warmer, just because I do typically shade with something darker and cooler. Hair is like one of those places that, depending on my mood, will affect how much I care about keeping the sections very clear. Sometimes I leave it up to when I'm actually doing the rendering and cleaning up process, which makes everything a pain, but sometimes I'm more willing to do it, sometimes I'm not, so. I'm not gonna make too harsh of highlights because I don't have super strong lighting coming from either direction. It's kind of just a very generic. So here I might add it to be a little bit more purpley. I tend to pick vibrant colors when it comes to like my color selection, so this is very much, like I said, kind of stylistic. There's also a few things I'm going to talk about to keep in mind before we merge our layers regarding the multiply layer. Because I don't have too much contrast going on here, but like I said, I might deepen it with the multiply. Her hat, I'm gonna quickly throw in our kind of cooler tone red mixture. So I like adding colors that are already pre-existing in my color palette, but if you want to add more like vibrancy or darker colors, then I highly recommend doing that if you want more contrast. Because if you only use the colors existing in your already pre-made like color palette or whatever, things might get a little bit, what is it called? Monochromatic looking. So I do play around with the saturation of some of the colors sometimes. Oh, for some reason, I've always enjoyed, for the most part. There are some drawbacks and some places where I wish I colored things into their own areas on different layers, but typically I color things all on one layer. Some things would benefit for me separating them so that I didn't have to keep doing like a back and forth if I accidentally color in like a certain area. There's some patterning that I'm gonna have to do probably at the very end that I didn't end up sketching, but I think it would have been a little bit more annoying for me to actually like fill out manually. I think once I'm done doing the base colors, I'm gonna switch to Jonghan Solo. As much as I like Thunder, I need a break from it. I don't know if it's because I'm looking at the reference again. It's not green enough. A bit of her blue and a little bit of red. And then this is also white and gold. So white, and then I'll do a little bit of a gold trim. So this is also supposed to be more, oh, it is a pink ribbon, so we can deepen it a little bit more. Because I don't know if you guys remember, I have an OC called Selwyn. It's supposed to be part of a different story based off of my friend's like AU. And I saw some of the jobs that you can get in Fantasy Life, or lives I guess you could have. And I feel like there's a few that could fit Selwyn, so I tried making him. It doesn't really look like him, but I'm gonna pretend it's them for now. Make this a little bit more prominent. I'm gonna add a little bit of that teal into her dress as well, I think. So what I'm gonna do now is I'm going to alpha lock both our sketches, and we can start to clean up any areas. There's not too many areas that I need to like do a lot of cleanup. It'll just make things a lot quicker when we're doing the rendering process and just like cleaning up certain areas. So get rid of anything you don't need. Whatever you think you need for like context, definitely leave in, but everything else you can probably just get rid of. Aside for some lines here that I might leave for context for myself. I think that is pretty much all I'm going to really clean up and erase. And I want to create a little bit more depth for them, or in between them. I can darken them up. We can also darken any place that might need a little bit more help with contrast. You can see the contrast already helps define portions of like the face a little bit more easily. And I'm also going to do the eyes to be a little bit more cooler. I might get rid of our circle here. So basically for certain areas, I'm going to try my best to match the sketch color with their surrounding areas just to give it a softer look. So if I were to merge my layers right now, any exposed lines that do not have color underneath them will revert back to what the original color is, which I think in this case it's like that light purpley pink, which is this color. So if you want to avoid having to really get rid of those, either change the color appropriately to make them match. So they might appear fairly dark. But we can do these for a lot of the areas that are kind of exposed to the background color. So I'm gonna merge their colors down, and then we can merge Hyacine. I do apologize if I keep saying her name wrong, but you can see there's some areas lacking contrast, so I'm going to make a new layer, set it to multiply. I'm also going to clip this to our Hyacine layer. Then we can pick, I'm going to pick kind of like a pale periwinkle-ish blue color areas that are on our multiply layer and kind of darken up some of our shadows. Now I'm not going to leave it this intensity, but for now, we're just going to use it to our advantage and kind of carve out some of the shapes that need a little bit more help with either the form or just shadows. Lighten the shadow a little bit. Now, some of these can be done at the very end of your rendering as well, but I like to play around with like the color changing while I'm rendering, so I like to apply it first. Okay, so what I'm going to do is alpha lock this. Now certain areas I would prefer it to not be as cool or saturated, so we can also just use a little bit of a lighter brush, and we can also knock it back slightly. Overlay if I want to adjust some of the colors. So this is to add any highlights. So you can see that if you add an overlay and then you add kind of like a color on top, you can really change our color palette. So I don't really need it to be that intense, but depending on certain areas, I might make things like the face a little bit more warmer. We might make other areas a little bit more on the cooler side. This I really don't mind, but I lowered this almost to like, I think anywhere between like 30 to 50. So this is kind of what it looks like before. And then after, kind of give it a slightly more cooler tinge to everything. I also forgot his little ribbon, or his little bow with the pendant that's similar to hers. So hopefully I don't forget at the very end. If I do, someone yell at me in the comments. But hopefully I don't forget. So I think nothing's worse than forgetting a detail that big on the sky. Because her face is a little lopsided. Because I think I had too thick of a sketch. So when I did some of the coloring and then the lighting and stuff, it looks like it's kind of like eating away at her face. I think that's like an issue I have sometimes when I'm doing the cleanup and rendering, is that my lines are a little bit too thick and I end up wanting to like shrink it down or make it thinner and more crisp. And it takes a little bit more effort because I made my sketch brush a little bit too thick and blobby. Which is why it's good to have like a second view open, so you don't get too lost on thinking we're making things look better and even, and we'll just end up with something very oblonged and uneven. Because I know sometimes when I don't change my sketch color and my sketch happens to be very clean and a little bit more on the crisp side, sometimes when I say like, oh, now it's time to really like refine things and spend several hours doing the rendering process, some people do think like, oh, I thought your drawing was finished. Which to me, I know it looks unfinished, but to some other people, they're not familiar with my process or what my final art looks like, probably. Kind of near the center portion of her lash line, we'll just lighten up. But her face looks more complete, which is good. Surrounding areas, which happens to be some of these hair pieces. Because are you one of those people who like cover the eyebrows completely with the hair? Because I think depending on how prominent they are and if I remember to clean them up, I typically leave them kind of like half and half. If they are not cleaned up and they're pretty bold on the face, I most likely will just make sure that they just float at the very top. Again, and I need to stop. I should try to finish the hat. Kind of finished one portion and then moved along. I think it's also just like almost like the ladder game where you see like connecting lines and you just kind of follow it and like it goes somewhere else. I think it just feels nice to have fun with the piece again. Darken this up. Sometimes bows or like any material that's like thicker, so like sweaters, chunky sleeves, anything like that, I always find it's fun to render because I can really make the item or article of clothing like more puffier. Whether or not I will end up blurring it will be up to me in hopefully the near future. I don't want to spend too long on this one anymore. So maybe I'll add like a little magic wisp type of thing that's like in the shape of a heart or something. Okay, I need to take a nice and close look at this. Make it a lot lighter. It's a little bit less noticeable. Okay, so I think that's actually pretty okay. And add a little bit of an outline to these, and I think she'll be done. And then we can work on little Ika, Ika. But I guess I need this portion and this portion to actually spread out a lot more. Fill it out slightly. But I think, yeah, I think she's pretty much done. So let's add an extra little flare. That, and am I gonna blur anything? I think we might be okay, unless we want to add movement. So we could group these together, duplicate them, I'll flatten, push and blur every so slightly. And we can bring her mostly into focus. We'll leave everything down here a little bit blurred. And I'm gonna change this to add. And I might pick... I'll leave it wispy. Yeah, I don't know if this is like necessary, but after that we can add little sparkles or whatever. Yeah, I think that's it for today's little session. I know it was mostly just the coloring portion, so hopefully this makes sense. The last thing I typically do at the very end, besides like all this madness of so many layers of add, I will do an overlay. Sometimes I add like a purpley blue color over top, but similar to when I was doing the first initial overlay is that I will make the face and any kind of skin a little bit warmer, and then anything else that we want to really push the cool tones or anything like that, we can exaggerate it a little bit more. Green towards her eyes, something like that, and then we can dull it down quite a bit. Here's kind of the before and then the after. So not too big of a change, but I do typically like things to be a little bit on the cooler side unless I'm working with like a lot of greens. Then I like a balance of warm and cool together. Hopefully you guys enjoyed watching me doing most of the like coloring process for today's video, and hopefully explaining a little bit of what I typically do when it comes to coloring from like just the sketching portion. Last but not least, I will show you guys the time lapse that includes all the sketching portion as well. You can kind of say that I went through kind of 2-3 poses. And then I was gonna give her more of like a magical girl-ish pose with her staff, but instead of making her look like more eager, I ended up going with something more cute, planning out her ringlets, putting her little memo sprite here, but then switching it over after and blocking it out. Then we have our background, blocking out her colors, which became very like bubblegummy-ish, and then eventually became cooler and cooler as we started to add overlay layers or blend modes, and then we start to really render all of her out. So we have this. So here's Hyacine. Hopefully you guys enjoyed watching today's session, and I'll talk to you guys next time in the next video. Bye!